first story of the week will have to be Huawei finally officially launching Harmony OS and saying that it is coming to over 100 Huawei phones, tablets, watches, and more. And I was initially confused for hours trying to figure out what Harmony OS actually is. Huawei is very confusing with that. And I realized at the end that I was confused because Huawei is calling 3 separate, distinct things Harmony OS, one of which isn't even an operating system. Okay, so first, there is an actual new operating system called Harmony OS developed by Huawei, which comes with its own microkernel and everything. This is new and unique in the same way that Google's Fuchsia, for example, is new and unique, but Huawei is intentionally hiding what devices this OS actually runs on. Maybe some Huawei TVs, maybe some IoT devices, but certainly not phones or watches. Then, second, Huawei also calls its fancy connected device ecosystem Harmony OS. And by ecosystem, I mean basically a slightly more powerful version of Samsung's SmartThings, or a little bit like Apple's HomeKit maybe. So it's basically Bluetooth, NFC, and a bunch of smart connection stuff and controls bundled together into a seamless package. How could such an ecosystem be classified as an operating system, I hear you ask? And I don't know, I don't think it can be, but Huawei insists on calling this a distributed operating system that runs across multiple devices and calls this distributed operating system Harmony OS. And finally, they also renamed the operating system of any device that supports Huawei's fancy new ecosystem as Harmony OS as well. That includes phones and tablets, which continue to run Android forks just like before. They have the Linux kernel, most of the same Android bits as before, and even the Android Q Easter egg apparently. But it also includes watches, which run an updated version of the same real-time operating system Huawei has had for years called Light OS, and it includes whatever operating system Huawei uses on their other devices like TVs and even earbuds. These devices obviously run completely different operating systems, but because they all support the new connectivity layer from Huawei's new ecosystem, Harmony OS, Huawei says they in turn all run Harmony OS as well. What? Slapping the same name on these 3 distinct things is kind of like Samsung waking up one day and deciding to take One UI, their Android skin, Tizen, their own operating system running on their TVs, and Wear OS running on their watches soon, and claiming that they now all run SmartThings OS because they can all connect to the SmartThings cloud, then simultaneously insisting that this is all somehow a single distributed OS called SmartThings. That is obviously some high-level marketing BS, but I actually think that the ecosystem that Huawei is building here actually looks pretty smart and quite interesting. So first, the connection and authentication between these devices should be simpler with a new UI that lets the user just drag and drop devices to each other or tap them together with NFC and have them quickly pair. Once they are synced, there is a new mini-app platform called Atomic Services. This is basically like SmartThings Quick Actions and Android Instant apps having a baby. So these mini apps don't require installation and they can do simple static things like show you text and images and offer toggles. So for example, to set up a new smart device, you don't have to install its app, but instead you just tap the NFC and it can load a tiny UI that shows you a few toggles and a bunch of content like recipes, for example. That's cool, and the innovation here is that since these don't actually have to be installed, the ecosystem can instantly drop the Atomic services, including theoretically the context that you're in, over between these devices too. And on top of that, the devices in the ecosystem can also use each other as inputs and outputs. So on your phone, for example, you can select any of your connected speakers as outputs for any audio that you're playing, and you can cast content to your smart TVs, for example, kind of like Apple AirPlay, but they also showed a demo where you could hook multiple phones together, and from the camera app, you could use the recordings of the other phones as inputs inside your camera app. Now, most of these capabilities are also available on other platforms through things like HomeKit or AirPlay or SmartThings, so it's not like a completely revolutionary idea, but theoretically the connections here should be more seamless and just slightly more powerful with Huawei. It also seems like Huawei's Android fork on their tablets and phones is moving further and further away from vanilla Android with each update. They are ripping out some bits and adding in others. So it might in a few years end up being something unique on its own, I guess, but until then, this is just an Android fork with a mustache and fake glasses on. Now, I don't quite understand why Huawei is trying to convince people that Harmony OS is something that it clearly isn't, but messaging aside, I actually think that the software ecosystem that they're building here is quite interesting, and I think at least in China, it could become a pretty big success. Apparently, other phone makers have already signed up and are trying it on their own devices as well. So if you'd like me to make a big tech altar video on it, analyzing this topic, then let me know down in